Friday, everyone. Give a little shout out to Tim Urikoff, who went ahead and purchased this mug for me. It's a little goofy, but shout out to Tim Urikoff, always. Hey, Mike, how's it going, buddy?
Hey, Rick, how are you, brother?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for joining us, man. Thanks for making the time.
It's quite the other way around.
Well, I'm very excited to talk to you about what you've been through, your book, all of your leadership, everything you've done so far. So I'm going to go over just a brief intro while everyone logs on, if that's okay.
Cool with me.
All right, buddy. So Mike Hayes, as many of you know, is already one of the most remarkable and really inspirational individuals in the world. And if you don't know him, you will certainly recognize him for all of his accomplishments once I go over these. He's former commanding officer of SEAL Team 2, leading a 2,000-person special operations task force in Afghanistan. His military decorations include a Bronze Star in Iraq, a Bronze Star in Afghanistan, and the Defense Superior Service Medal from the White House. In addition to his 20-year career as a Navy SEAL, Mike was a former White House Fellow, served 2 years as Director of Defense Policy and Strategy at the National Security Council, and he's worked directly with both President Bush and President Obama. Beyond his military and governmental service, Mike is currently Chief Digital Transformation Officer at VMware, leading the company's worldwide business operations, previous strategic operations at Cognizant Technology, and also notably, he was Chief of Staff and COO at Bridgewater Associates, which is notably the world's largest and most successful hedge fund. Most pertinent to this discussion today, he's the author of the recently published book, Never Enough, a Navy SEAL commander's view on living a life of excellence, agility, and meaning. So it's a great read. I've gone through it. Truly amazing. And Mike, great to have you on just to discuss the book and everything that you have planned moving forward.
Well, Rick, no, my thanks to you for the incredible impact you've had on the world. I cringe when you read that other stuff out. It's really you're the inspiration and the aspiration for all of us. And thanks for all you've done for not just me but everybody.
Well, I think most people find your background absolutely fascinating. We're going to start just with the basics because your background is, again, so fascinating. Tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the Navy SEALs. What inspired you? Was there one particular moment or something that you've always wanted to do?
You know, my grandfather was at Pearl Harbor as a brand new 21-year-old officer on that day of infamy, December 7th, 1941. And, nobody ever pushed the military, but I certainly grew up with people like my grandfather and father and mother and family members seeing what a life of service really is. So I think that while the real foundation is more of character and charisma and attributes than a single point in time. And when I just turned 50 recently. When I was a freshman in college, we had invaded Panama, and there was a Navy SEAL killed on the runway in Paitilla airfield run in Panama. So I was able to see the community come together and celebrate John Connor's life, and so that also did make an indelible mark on me.
So tell us a little bit, everyone knows about how insane it is to become a Navy SEAL and the training, and but tell us a little bit about what you went through and some of the stories about the insane training that you have to go through.
Yeah, look, SEAL training, the beauty of it is everybody goes through the similar, absolutely crushing, physical and mental, crucible. Because once you pop out on the other side, that's what we all transact on, is trust and knowing what our teammates are capable of, even if we didn't go through training with exactly with those teammates. The training is really designed to break you down beyond whatever talents and attributes you have. It will find your weakness. And so it's really not physical, it's really mental. Of course, there are minimum standards for running and sweat. It really gets into the mental ability. My class started with 120 guys and 19 finished, which is not atypical.
Wow. I really want to get into that mental fortitude part because that just fascinates me. What they always say is that the Navy SEAL training will take you to the point where you're going to break and then you push past that. Tell us a little bit about how you find that reserve, how you push past your limits, and how you find that extra gear.
That's a great question. I think it starts with on really looking at the goal of what you're trying to achieve and then saying, what price am I willing to pay to achieve that goal? So, just like when you became, the world's #1 brain surgeon, the universe's #1, look, that's a long path. But, so while we all choose different paths, I think we can all agree that we look at what is possible in the world and say, how much work will it take? So once you have that in your mind, and for me in SEAL training, I said to myself, look, I'll pay whatever cost it takes. I will be a SEAL. And one of the things I tell people who say they're 99% sure they're going to make it through SEAL training is that I'm 100% sure you won't. You have to go in with that like absolute, I will get this done mentality.
Yeah, that's so great to hear, because everyone considers the SEALs so physically fit. But what I hear from people like you is that it literally is mostly mental and having that extra gear to kind of persevere. And that's amazing. What do you personally tell yourself when you hit the wall? What are your colleagues who are also SEALs? What do they recommend when you hit that wall?
Rick, let me challenge the premise of your question, because something's only a wall if you think it's a wall, right? And so back to the point earlier around what price are you willing to pay to go achieve something? If you say to yourself, I'll pay any price, which isn't the right answer for every question. There certainly are things we shouldn't do, but really the essence of your point is it is really a great question, because we all get tired, we all get fatigued and run down. But I would say that first of all, you just have to deal with the conditions in front of you, and so just being able to think both long term and short term simultaneously is really important. Long-term, thinking about the goal you're trying to achieve. Short-term is, where's my left foot going after my right foot moves forward?
So it's just so it's basically baby steps and not looking at the entire process, but just one step at a time, essentially.
One step at a time.
Yeah. Now, something that I've heard from people who do special forces like yourself is, you go on a mission and it's so intense. Obviously, it's life and death every single moment that you're there. How do you transition back to normal life? And is that difficult? I mean, it would seem like that's a very difficult transition when your life is at stake every single moment, and then you're back to kind of civilian activities.
It's a great question, and maybe a frustrating answer. It is and it isn't hard. Let me explain. The is hard is that it is a totally different context. But here's what is really critical anywhere in special operations, or frankly the military, and just professional life, is how do you drop into a situation and then have the agility to be in a different situation and understand what is needed, and then to be the thing that is needed, or to know how to go get the thing that is needed. So the concept of agility is, as you know, the middle third of never enough. And I sort of write about it quite a bit. But to me, when you're coming home, you just say, okay, I have now the surroundings, the goal of what I'm trying to do is totally different. And so, yes, it's an adjustment to kind of maybe move out of fifth gear and drop it back down into third or first if you're lucky. Because look, we can't sprint through life. We have to rest and recover and add to our political or our intellectual capital, and not constantly take it away from us.
So that term, so you're talking about being agile, and I thought that was such an interesting term. Just for the layperson, go over that again. You're basically saying that one of the best skills to have in terms of being successful is being agile. And by that, you mean adjusting to whatever situation you are confronted with, whether it's life and death, or it's a boardroom meeting, or it's a situation room like you've been in the White House, to being home with your family, what have you.
Absolutely. Essentially, let's use the metaphor of leadership. A lot of people understand that leadership is about being a leader and being able to be a follower. I think what often gets missed, Rick, is that the most important point there is knowing when to be which. Knowing when to be out front and inspiring and pulling people forward, but conversely, knowing when to move to the back of the room and see the awesomeness in your organization kind of step forward and take more responsibility and do more things. And so that ability to move back and forth in a situation is really critical. And interestingly, in the SEALs, we have this concept. It's, while of course it's military, and yes, there are ranks and everything. Look, that's not the way to make decisions. It's not. It's really who's closest to the problem and who has the best abilities to solve the problem. And that requires somebody who's, like, say, a more senior rank, like me, in charge of the whole team, to say, hey, somebody else is better placed to do this. Then it takes the humility to say, hey, the best thing that I can do in this situation as a leader is to actually give the authority and the responsibility away to somebody else, because the only thing that I'm interested in is the outcome of the whole organization. So why in the world should I call my own number if calling somebody else's number is going to be more effective?
I mean, that's such another great life lesson. You're talking about delegating, but delegating with trust to people who you know are going to produce at the same level that you would produce. And that seems like that's a big theme amongst the Navy SEALs. Like you were saying, you basically finish your training and everyone trusts each other because they've been through that crucible. How do you translate that into the business world, which I think has been fascinating? Not everyone finishes Navy SEALs and goes on to be an incredibly successful financial business person. How did you make that whole transition?
Well, there's a lot in that question. Let me take them to the two essential parts there. First of all, I think the way that you get better really is getting out of your comfort zone. And that can either be because we push ourselves out of our comfort zone, or there's some other exogenous force or pressure that pushes us out of our comfort zone. But in either of those cases, we're going to grow. And a lot of people see success or failure as binary. I actually think to really look at it, you have to go down the logic tree one more time. You go down failure, and then you say, did you learn or not learn? If you failed and learned, you just succeeded, because that's going to feed back into the system and you're going to grow. You as an individual and your organization will grow. What's really critical is that you have the objective about yourself and reflect on what could have gone better, what should have gone better, and et cetera. Now, to the transition point, look, in the business world, it's exactly the same thing. What's the goal of the organization? What's the vision? What's where we're going? What's the strategy? In other words, how are we going to get there? And then how do you think about risk adjusting those various paths that can get you to the goal, so you assume the minimum amount of risk as possible to achieve said goal? Then you just have a decision to make. How much resource, whether it's time or money or manpower, whatever it is, what's the input that you're going to need to go achieve that vision? And you may do a simple cost-benefit analysis. And I don't mean that fiscally. I mean that very holistically, and say, is the juice worth the squeeze? If yes, go do it. And if not, hey, wave it off.
I love the way you're talking about how your best bang for your buck, right? If putting the effort is not gonna end up in the desired result, don't waste your time there. You really focus in your book about the pursuit of being excellent, and I think that is such a powerful kind of motto to have in life. Describe how the title of your book and the pursuit of excellence kind of go together. Like never enough, and never essentially being excellent enough, always being hungry for that next step.
Absolutely. The title's provocative intentionally. People hear never enough and they automatically think fame, fortune, etc. Really, never enough is about meaning and impact. And so to me, Rick, like you said, the way to have meaning and impact is to pursue excellence individually and organizationally, because then the more excellence that we have, the more we can pull others up. A lot of people think, let me go be excellent so I can have my name up in lights or earn more money or whatever. The real thing that excellent people do is they pull others up. Leaders should be judged on nothing other than how many other leaders they create around them. And often we don't know that for 2 or 4 or 5 years down the road. So that pursuit of excellence to me isn't about self, it's really about others. And I think the thing that is so important is understanding like what gives us energy and what impact do we want to have on the planet. This isn't like a regular SEAL book of like I walked up the stairs and turned right and I shot this. Not what this book is at all. The never enough concept is leaning in and doing the hard things. We one more sentence or two on this, Rick, because I think what's really important is you say, well, why don't people do the harder things? And I think it's really because we at the end of the day, we get a little bit scared sometimes or nervous or worried that people are going to think that we tried something and failed. And we're concerned about how we will be perceived on the planet. The thing is, how do we as teammates make our other teammates say, you know what, if you try something super hard and fail and learn, I'm not going to think less of you. I'm going to think less of you if you didn't try the hard thing. That's really where it's at.
And it's I'm just fascinated by kind of what makes you tick, because your drive and your focus is obviously out of this world. Take us through your kind of daily routine, even nowadays where you're not, a, active Navy SEAL. How are you always looking to improve? How do you continually improve upon what you're doing and not get burnt out?
Well, it starts with recognizing the last part of your question there, which is knowing what gets you burned out and not letting that threshold get met. So a lot of people think the answer to your question has to do with activity. How much work am I doing? How many hours am I working? It's really, if you think about it, draw a situation where you said you could do your favorite thing in the world for 24 hours a day or 20 hours. At some point, you're going to say, I need to sleep 6 hours. But if you're having more fun doing the thing that you are than sleeping, you're going to want to go to bed late and wake up early. So the more you can align your energy and your interests in life, the more you're going to get through, and the more you're going to contribute, the more you're going to achieve. So I think the most important part of your question is the alignment between what gives you as an individual energy. Nobody else can answer that for you. Other people can do the Socratic method and ask questions and help you figure it out yourself. A couple of years ago, I led a large people transformation at my company. And then when I'm hiring people, I hired, I think 30 or so people that, very, very senior people. The thing that over 400 interviews that I said almost every time was that, look, I'm trying to thread the needle between 3 circles. Number 1 is what gives you as an individual energy. Number 2 is what are you good at? And then number 3 is what does the business need? And the only answer as an organization, whether you're my company or your hospital or wherever, it's are you in the center of that Venn diagram? And if yes, then we'll all work a lot harder because we're doing what we love.
That's so interesting. And that, because that brings up the whole debate about, do you do what you're passionate about or do you do what you're good at? And hopefully those two things kind of go together. But what's your interpretation? Let's say someone's passion is, art, but they're not very good at it. Whereas they're good at finances, but they may not like it. Like, what would you advise that person? Follow your passion or follow what you're good at?
Well, I think that's a really awesome topic. I think there's a question also of what do you think can change through time? Like at this point, like I know I'm never going to play in the NFL and I'm never going to be a brain surgeon. So I'm probably not going to go try to, run routes as a wide receiver, and I'm not going to go start studying chemistry, because the chance of me being a brain surgeon or in the NFL are 0. And so at some point, realism needs to set in on saying, what's the opportunity set for me? But I think, there's also what do you do to, there are multiple things we do in life. And so it's not an either or, it can be an and. For example, when I've been places post the SEALs where sometimes the mission, the connection to, nationalism and democracy and American flags and apple pie wasn't quite there. Okay, that's okay. We know what we have at work. And then how do you supplement that by being on a board of a nonprofit or staying connected to the SEAL community like I have since I've been retired and helping people who need help? And that to me, I think is the way to fill that in and augment that.
That is just spot on, I would say. Another big part of your book that I want to focus on, you're talking about finding meaning in life. And that can be interpreted in so many different ways, professionally, personally, at different ages. What does meaning really mean? What would you say is the take-home point for your readers when you talk about the importance of finding meaning in life? And how have you, through your career as a Navy SEAL commander, found meaning in your life?
Look, it's like you smartly note, it's different for everybody. So my answer is going to be biased toward what gives me energy and meaning. The thing I would emphasize and what I try to do in Never Enough is to help people draw out what gives you meaning and do that thinking. So it's back to those 3 circles, that first circle of energy, and then in the second circle of what are you good at? But to your question is playing it forward and saying, what's the outcome you want to achieve in the world? And for me personally, I remember writing my application, my essay to be the White House Fellow back in 2007. I wrote this 200-word essay, which are the hardest types. 500 words or 1,000 is easier because you can ramble, maybe like I'm doing verbally right now. But the 200-word tight essay, I remember saying, why do you want to be a White House fellow? The answer was, I want to not just positively impact people, I want to positively impact people to go positively impact others. That is what makes the nation stronger. That's what makes the globe stronger. It makes the world stronger. And so that's what gives me energy, Rick. And I know that about myself. And so that's why, you know, writing a book was a hard thing. It's like, because you can't write a book and just be the president of your own fan club. That's not a book. You have to, you know, to share and to inspire and teach and entertain. You've got to be open and share, frankly, more of the things that you've done wrong than you've done right, because that's where the wisdom and the learning comes from.
God, that is wonderful to hear. You know, I'm going to go over some of the examples of your book, because obviously you've been in some situations that no other human beings have ever been in, and I want to hear about how those situations have molded you to become the leader that you are today. So, for example, in your book, you talk about being held at gunpoint. You talk about being threatened with, you know, being executed. You've jumped out of a building that is set to explode. Those are obviously situations that none of us, for the most part, are ever going to be anywhere near. Talk about how those life and death situations have molded you now as an executive leader.
Two answers, probably a million answers, but the top two. Number one is perspective. You know, like, keep what we're doing in front of us in perspective. You know, I like you said, I've had a lot of near-death experiences, and I've also, like every SEAL of my era, have buried far too many friends. And so as you really do go through some of the challenges that I and other SEALs and other military members have been through, it's really keeping the big picture. There is no single day in our lives where we are that are as important as how we live our entire life. So that perspective is number one. Number two is empathy. The ability to see ourselves or our actions through the lens of others is something that a lot of leaders fall short on. We end up with our own both conscious and unconscious biases, because, you know, we've learned a certain way, we've grown a certain way, we've had certain, you know, whatever experiences we've had, kind of make us take work to look at ourselves in a different light. And so when we can look at ourselves truly from the outside in, and be open enough to be critical and say, gosh, you know what, there's a better way to do this or that or the other thing. That's really what great leadership is. I think that, you know, to make it a little bit more tangible, look, really, we're all motivated by basically some combination of the same things. It's compensation, public recognition, learning, quality of life. You know, if we named like 5 other things, we'd capture everything people are inspired by. So now, I'm not personally a public recognition person. Let me, if I'm working with somebody who just wants their name up in lights and to you know, win the awards and et cetera, and have a bajillion followers, you know, like that person is a little bit different than me. But how do I respect that person's different, and not just respect it, but appreciate it and recognize that those differences coming together as a team make a team stronger, because you see things different ways, and in different inputs from different angles make decisions better. They make teams stronger. I deeply, deeply believe that. I could tell you about times that in Afghanistan, as the commander of a special operations task force, that we made decisions that were different than the decision had I been the only person making a decision, and they were the right decision. And so separating the decision making as me as an input and me as the decider, those are two different roles. And how do sometimes people who give different inputs, how do I celebrate that as a leader, and then be open enough to say, you know what, that idea is better than mine. Let's go your direction.
I mean, it's so great to hear about how you have to interpret everyone's strengths in a different fashion. Everyone has different strengths. And I've always heard the term, you know, if you want to have a great team, surround yourself with people who do what you don't do well. And that way there's no kind of, you know, weak links in the armor. Something else that you really talk about in the book is kind of how your life was in danger every day and how you would communicate with your family. And that brings up the question of, how much do you believe in the statement, live every day like it's your last? And do you try to impart that on those around you, because really, honestly, at any point in time, any of us can be gone. But you in particular, going what you went through, does it give you a true appreciation of every single day and to make the most of every opportunity?
Absolutely. When I got commissioned in the Navy out of Holy Cross in 1993, my grandfather, who of course has since passed away, but the guy at Pearl Harbor, for those who joined late, he said to me, pulled me aside, and quietly, I'll never forget it. It's still very moving to me. But he said, Mike, don't die for your country. Go on living for it. So while your question is spot on, live every day like it's your last, keep perspective, etc., but plan on having a really long life and positive impact over many, many years to help people. If we're oriented for others more than self, then we can never be wrong.
That's perfectly said. I mean, what would you say makes a great leader overall? Obviously, you are one of those. But if you could list 3 qualities that make a great leader, what would those be?
Number 1 is humility. Number 2 is empathy, like we talked about. And number 3, of course, has to be competence. You just can't be average and at what you do and have people and be able to inspire and move people. So look, it does take work. Like it doesn't come easy. So there's like number 4 is work ethic. Number 5 is, we can keep going on and on. But I think the another really important attribute is understanding what you don't know and how to ask how to ask for help and say, I need somebody who can do something that I can't do. It's not like with Never Enough with the book. I'm donating all of my profits to a nonprofit that I started that pays off mortgages for Gold Star families. And so that I'm not making 1 penny on my book. I'm donating all those profits. And I'm very comfortable. It takes work, but I'm very comfortable now saying, please help me. Go pick it up on Amazon. Please do a review. Please, because elevating the conversation, bringing and saying, hey, please, will you help me, is something that I haven't been good at my whole life, but I'm starting to get better at it.
Well, we definitely need to talk about that a little bit more, because that's such an important topic you just brought up. So you're not making a penny off your book. All the profits go to the Gold Star families. Explain a little bit about how, if someone who's listening buys this book, what does that money go towards?
So, like I said, I've buried way too many friends and teammates. A Gold Star family is somebody who has lost a service member, and in these last decade and a half, almost 2 decades of combat, and so the Gold Star. Let me just give this with a story. I just paid off my 5th house back around Thanksgiving time. I never use anybody's names. It is a very confidential, quiet organization that just invisible hand kind of pay off mortgages for Gold Star families. At this point, I've paid off 5 mortgages. Those 5 days of going to see a woman, a widow, a wife of a friend of mine, and somebody who has paid the ultimate sacrifice, and being able to look her in the eyes and say, you don't have a mortgage anymore. It's really, man, it's those are the best days. It's very emotional, very hard, but rivers of tears inevitably, but tears of pride and joy but of course of sacrifice. And so that for me is where all of these profits go. And in the around Thanksgiving time, there's a woman who lost her husband in the middle of the war in Afghanistan. She lost her business and she got back on her feet, was scraping by, doing okay. She lost her business in the pandemic. She and her 4 kids did not have a home. And now, thanks to really some of the success of Never Enough and the generosity of people, she has a home. And that is really, really powerful.
I mean, it's so selfless, and it goes to show you how helping others feels better than helping yourself. And we're going to wrap up here soon, but most of us, if not all of us, have never won gold medals of honor. We're not protecting this country. We're not Navy SEALs. But for the regular human being, how would you summarize, how should people listening really strive for excellence, find meaning in life, and be agile? How can you summarize that for all of our listeners?
It starts with service. And so, Rick, everybody says thank you for your service to the million active duty forces and to the 17 million veterans. Rightly so. The thing is, the America can do and the world can do better. It's not just thank somebody for your service, but join us in service. And so join us in service in whatever way makes the most sense to you. We all have different interests, abilities, skills. Like I said earlier, look, not everybody's going to be a Navy SEAL or work in the White House Situation Room, etc. Totally cool. Everybody, you know, whether you're taking plastics out of the ocean, you're helping the elderly, mentoring the young, you know, creating fire breaks in the forests, whatever it is, get off the sideline, serve the nation, serve your family, your neighbors, your fellow citizens, because in taking ownership of this nation, that is what pulls us up. Pulling others up pulls us up.
Mike, I'm gonna wrap this up because I know you're super busy. I could talk to you honestly for hours. Learning what makes you tick has been great. Obviously, you're an exceptional human being, and I feel like if people had 1/100th of your drive and your dedication and your focus, the world would be a much better place. Thank you for all you've done for this country, all you continue to do at your level, and the leadership that you provide for everyone around you. And for everyone who's listening, definitely buy the book, Never Enough. It's amazing. Talks about all of these, you know, great topics that, you know, Mike has been talking about, and it's incredibly applicable to normal human beings, not just Mike. So.
Rick, thanks to you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for, again, let's finish where I started, which is thanks for all your incredible service, taking care of people in their times of need. It's just another example of we all contribute and serve in different ways, and that starts with you, my friend.
All right, buddy. You have a great afternoon. And again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, my friend.
All right, take care. Talk soon.
Talk soon.